Well, the Bible doesn't explicitly give us a date of creation. However, we can actually figure that out. In the Old Testament, we have what's called chronogenealogies. So these are talking about when somebody lived. You remember those parts in the Bible where it says so-and-so was so old when his son was born and he was so old when his son was born? We can actually add up those generations and we'll get a reliable time span from Adam all the way up to Abraham. And then after that, it's interesting because God in his word talks all the time about time. He tells us the exact number of years that the Israel nation was captive in Egypt, and then that this king of Israel ruled for this many years, followed by this king for this many years, followed by this king for this many years. You know, we can actually do some mathematical equations and we can add up those generations and we'll actually get a reliable time span from Adam all the way up to Jesus. So if we know the exact amount of time and the time span between Adam and Jesus, and we know all the historical events that happened during that time, yet we've been told all our lives that science has proven millions of years and we want to somehow fit them into the Bible. Let me ask you a question. Can you fit millions of years anywhere between Adam and Jesus, logically, according to the Bible?
No. So it would have to go before Adam, correct?
Exactly. And that is where the theological problems begin. Because you see in those sedimentary layers that we were talking about that are so massive, what we find inside those layers are fossils. And fossils, simply put, are preserved dead things. So if we say that the millions of years of time that we claim are scientifically accurate are before Adam, then that means we have death before the fall, death before Adam, death before the curse. Now, does it sound like we might be stepping on an important doctrine?
Right. It sounds like there's going to be some theological problems with that viewpoint.
You bet. You've got to remember that in the beginning of the Bible, that what we have is we have a perfect creation. You know, God said for 7 times that his creation was good, and on the 7th time he said it was very good. And you see a very good world. There is no death, no sorrow, no pain. It was a perfect place where we were created in order to live in harmony with our Creator. And there would be no death. And we all know we don't live in a world like that anymore, do we? And that's because God did command Adam. He said that when you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you will surely die. You see, this is when death came into the world. And when we put millions of years of death in those days of creation, when we say each day in creation represents millions of years, which many Christians do, in fact, I'd even say most Christians do, putting death before the fall actually turns the gospel upside down.
So it impacts the gospel, but it also impacts the character of God as well as the justice of God.
Sure. Because you see, we do worship a merciful and loving God, but he is also just, and we should be thankful for that. And because he was just, because man disobeyed, there was a consequence for sin, and it was death. You know, and it's interesting because every descendant of Adam, the Bible tells us, inherited that sin nature, and along with it, they inherited the penalty of death. And it seems like a really grim story, but God sent a rescue mission, didn't he? He sent his son, who was God in the flesh, who lived a perfect life, who came down to earth that was completely innocent, but became the Lamb of God to die for everyone that had sinned, which would include you and I, everyone that ever has and everyone that ever will live. God brought a rescue mission to save us, to pay the penalty that we deserve for sin. So, if we think that science has proven evolution along with its millions of years and those sedimentary layers, which include those fossils, and you know some of those fossils show evidence of cancer. When God said his creation was very good, does anybody think cancer's very good? No. So you can see how the millions of years actually impact the gospel in a radical way. Again, Christians need to stop saying that God could have used millions of years to create.
All right, Scott, you've brought out a lot of information that many Christians may have never heard before. So if someone wanted to know more information, I see you've brought a resource with you. Can you tell us about it?
Sure. This book, I think, would be an excellent resource. It's called Refuting Compromise. It's a theological, scientific, and biblical refutation of what's called progressive creationism. This is where we get those ideas that each day in Genesis represents millions of years and having millions and billions of years before Adam. So for those people that want to know more, this would be an excellent resource for them to read and understand this topic in much more depth.
We're going to make the free ebook available. Find the link in the description.